Hi, everyone. My name is Danielle.
Hi, I'm Jenna.
I think Jennifer wanted us to make an announcement first. I think the sign-up sheet is being passed around now, and if you didn't register to go, if you're here and you didn't register to go to the website or the Eventbrite, then do that. I think before we start, we just wanted to introduce ourselves and tell you a little bit about us. I'm a third-year doctoral student. I'm from Cincinnati, Ohio. I lived in Chicago for 7 years and was involved in breast cancer work then. And now I came back to school to get my PhD with a focus on incarceration and overall health and well-being. My trajectory started at University of Michigan, where I got my undergrad in microbiology. I took a year off and worked on Capitol Hill. Then went back to University of Michigan to get my master's in epidemiology with a maternal and child health focus, and then went to Chicago, did work there, and now I'm here again. So I just wanted to give you guys that background about me.
Yeah, hi, I'm Jenna. I started my training in Toronto, Canada, and I actually did my undergrad in Toronto as well, did my MPH there at the University of Toronto, and then worked for several years in research as a research coordinator, doing research on homelessness and mental illness, and decided that I wanted to come back to school to do a PhD, and so here I am at UCLA. So actually kind of similar trajectories. Here my research interests are mental illness and substance use disorder and homelessness, and particularly when all three happen at the same time. What does that mean for people? So yeah. And feel free to ask us questions as we go. We're hoping that this will be conversational and informal, and ask us about our personal experiences with some of these topics, and jump in with your own too. We'd love to hear from you.
Sure.
Will these be made available online or?
I believe so, right?
We'll try. I'm recording the audio, so hopefully the audio quality is good enough, and I'll post the audio and your slides online. Thank you.
Sure. Okay, so we wanted to just start out by saying, as you might have noticed and might have heard, there's a big difference between graduate school and just going to college for undergrad. It's a very different experience in a lot of ways, and there are different expectations too. And so everything that we're going to be talking about today is kind of framed in this context of, grad school is different, and how do we study and orient our lives, and how do we prepare for this experience that is different from all of our previous experiences and all of the skills that we've built to adapt to our previous experiences. So grad school requires a different approach to studying. In particular, from my experience, I've noticed that there's less focus on memorization and less focus on, just presenting back information that you've read. It's a much more active process. So you need to actually understand what you're reading, develop an opinion on it, interpret what the authors are saying, read between the lines a little bit, and critique other people's work so that you can, go a little bit deeper into that particular topic and understand it in a more nuanced way than in undergrad. There's an interesting, I found in my undergrad, there was a big focus on breadth, and I took classes all over the place and really got good exposure to a lot of different topics. And although the MPH is I think most people here are actually in the MPH. I should have clarified first, but is everybody in the MPH program? Can you just raise your hands if you're, yeah. Do we have any doctoral students here? No? Okay. So the MPH is, although it's a degree with a lot of different elements to it that attempts to produce very well-rounded public health professionals, you are focused much more in depth than you were in the undergrad stage on learning what it means to be a public health professional and, developing expertise and becoming some version of an expert in some of these topics. So it really requires a deeper approach to thinking about the concepts and ideas that you're hearing in your classes. And what I found in my undergrad is there was a lot of reporting back. So you're sort of a passive, recipient of knowledge. You understand it, and you report it back so that the professor knows that you've understood what they've said and the readings that they've given you. In grad school, it's much more about synthesizing the information for yourself, making sense of it. How does this fit with my past experiences? How does this fit with my other readings? And how doesn't it fit? And so analyzing those things for yourself and then making an argument. And I think for me personally, that part of making an argument and having an opinion on something was very different, and I didn't actually realize that was a requirement to have an opinion on the information I was receiving. I remember my first literature review I wrote in my MPH. That was the feedback from the professor. They said, yeah, you did a good job of, like taking stock of what was out there on this particular topic. But, but so what? What's the so what, right? What does this mean for the field? What are the next steps? Where are the gaps? So all those kinds of things are good to be thinking about and discussing amongst yourselves, using your colleagues as resources, and really trying to take your understanding of the information to the next level. So, and then the last bullet, it requires exploring alternatives, questioning theories and ideas, and asking questions that enable you to get more in depth in the topics. So that is going to be the frame under which we talk about the rest of the study skills. And so we broke our talk up today into two different parts. Danielle's first going to be talking about some perspectives on being study skills, and then I'm going to be talking about some of the specific techniques.
And feel free again to jump in with any questions.
Yeah.
So perspective, and this might be like not quite the right word, but focus. So your study skills involve both techniques and being able to focus on the material. And so some ways that you can help yourself focus, I'm going to go over right now. So kind of making sure that you take stock of yourself to be able to focus. It's easy to get lost in the minutia of every class. Maybe you're really good at statistics, maybe you're not. But when you're learning that, you just have to remember, I think it's really important to you, that this is a class that's supposed to help develop your skills so that you can be a great public health professional. So you may not offhand relate to the material all the time, but it's really good to remember why you came here, what passion drove you to want to come get your master's, and figure out how to apply the information that you're learning in your classes, whether it's statistics, theory, or whatever elective that you decide to take. How does that apply to improving your ability to become a great public health professional? So kind of just remembering that you're here for training, and while you may not always have strengths in a certain area, that they're going to help you in other ways. So like, what experiences and skills do you bring? Really understanding that about yourself. You may be returning from the workforce. You may be coming straight out of undergrad. But probably everyone has some kind of strength that they feel that they already have when they're coming into the program. So really understand that about yourself, and it's going to help you with time management, particularly when you're studying, and you may not need to focus on some areas as much as others. Similarly with the skills that you're looking to gain. I use statistics as an example often because I know that people struggle with it a lot. And so, again, you really need to understand stats to become a really good public health professional. You need to be able to understand the literature. It includes different methods. So knowing that and understanding and applying that to what your ultimate goal is going to be very helpful for you to maintain focus. And then the fourth bullet point, what environments do you study best in? Just, again, kind of this self-awareness. For example, I study best by myself with music. Like, I need some background noise or in a coffee shop, and I know that about myself. So if my cohort, and Jenna's part of my cohort, is like, hey, I want to get together to study this information, maybe I feel like I need my own personal time first before I can go into that group, and just really owning that you know yourself and the way that you study best. And so, of course, the study skills are class dependent. Like, you're going to have to write papers in some classes and take tests in others. You're going to have to do group work in some and individual work in others. And really understanding that. So when you get a syllabus for a class, I think it's really easy to just kind of skim over like the description. Yes, I kind of already know what this is. But if you really read it in detail and understand how familiar is this material to you, how much time are you going to need to spend on it to do well? And then how can you apply the information that you're learning? Again, I kind of said this in the last slide, to your ultimate goals. Is it something that you feel like supplements what you already know, adds to, or do can you be helpful to other people in the class? You kind of have the skills that are being presented in the class that you can contribute to others. Understanding the expectations of the professor is key. I find that in my own personal history, I've gotten docked for just not reading the instructions, right? It's in the syllabus. They say they want 12.5, 1.5 to 2 space, 1-inch margins, like that, those little details of not reading the instructions. And this isn't so much studying, but just making sure that you do everything you can to be successful in the class. And then be aware of your resources. And I think Jenna might talk a little bit more about that later with the techniques, but there's the writing center. I see flyers up all the time for tutors that are being offered, and Jennifer might have a really good idea of some resources generally also. But of course, you always want to be able to go and schedule office hours with the faculty, and don't be afraid to do that.
Yeah, and on that note, I think there are TAs in most of your classes, and the professors and the TAs want to hear from you. They want to get to know you. And like we talked about earlier, this material might already be familiar to you because you have an undergrad, perhaps in a related discipline, but you need to take your learning to the next level and, develop opinions and analyze it. And a good way to check in that you're doing that and you're on track is to have conversations with your instructors about it. So, dropping into office hours, exactly like Danielle said, even if you don't have anything in particular to discuss, just, making sure that you're on the right track with how you're interpreting and discussing these ideas can be really helpful. And that's what they're there for. The professors want to get to know you. They want to hear from you. And that's exactly what the office hours are for. So don't be afraid just to go in and even if you don't have one particular thing to discuss.
Right. And then thirdly, know thy program. So this program, I would say, I'm going to start with number 2 because it's a very independent learning environment. We're all adults here. We're going to be public health professionals. So I think we have to take ownership of our own learning, and really if we feel like we're lacking in somewhere, don't expect that we're going to be held, our hands are going to be held through it. We really have to be our own advocates and just really be aware of that piece of the program, I think is important. And then, of course, you guys, I think, have a dictated curriculum for the first year as master's students, and then the second year might be a little bit more liberal. And so really kind of taking stock of that whole picture, right? Looking quarter 1, quarter 2, quarter 3. Are the classes I have to take in quarter 1 areas where I feel like I have, some skills already? Am I going to need to devote more time in quarter 1 than quarter 2? Not loading too much on yourself at first, kind of understanding if quarter 2 and quarter 3 are going to be a little bit more intense for you, not putting too much on your plate, but kind of looking at it from the whole big picture, I think will help, again, with this time management piece and your ability to focus. And then, of course, again, this is like office hours, but there are going to be certain faculty that you just vibe with, right? You're just going to you may have the similar interests, you may just connect really well when you meet them. Really take the opportunity to reach out to those faculty if you feel like you're struggling in any way. Because, again, like Jenna said, that's what they're here for. And I don't know if you have...
Yeah, and one more just anecdote I wanted to share. In my MPH program, it was completely different. Not, similar, but it was a different program. But one of the most helpful things that the director of the program said to us coming in is, take this time at the beginning to figure out, and exactly what Danielle was talking about earlier, taking stock of yourself and what you want to get out of this experience. Where do you want to be, and how is this experience going to get you there? Because that focus and knowing, the classes that you're taking, your own strengths, and how it all fits into the bigger picture keeps you going and helps you really to, excel for your own reasons and to get the most out of the program for you. And I thought it was really valuable advice to look at, where am I strong, where am I weak, and not necessarily in studying, but, I at the time had wanted to do a global health focus, and so I had no global health experience, never even taken a course on it, basically just watched World Vision commercials, like that's all. But so that was a huge weakness for me, and I mapped it out, and I said, this is what I want to get out of the program, and that intentionality was actually really, really powerful in helping me to focus and just giving me the drive and motivation to get to the end and to work hard all the way through it to get to my own end goal. And I think that feedback from my program director at the time came because the program was hearing a lot from its graduates that they sort of got out of it and it was like they had been dropped out of a tornado and they were like, what just happened to me? Where am I? Why did I take all these courses? I don't have too many marketable skills, and they do, but it's having a bit more intention at the beginning can help you feel much more focused and sort of poised and ready to tackle a health problem at the end. So I think we're going to get into some of the specifics of study skills in a minute, but all of this awareness, self-awareness, program awareness can really help to drive some of the deeper things that lead to good study skills and keep you going. Did I see a question? No, just wishful thinking. Okay, so some specific techniques. So, the verdict is in. People who join study groups do better in the program, this program and many programs. It's a really powerful tool, and it really helps you to discuss these issues. So as we were saying, it's good to bounce ideas around. It's good to try on different perspectives, like take an article and with a small study group, somebody can play devil's advocate and the other person can play the role of the author trying to fight for their position, and somebody can play a neutral role. And having these discussions are ways that you can take your understanding of the material to that next level. And it also really helps you to be aware of where other people are at and where you're at in relation to your colleagues. We have a few tips we had a study group last year when we were doing our comprehensive exam. So our whole cohort got together and did these study groups. And, there's a lot of intangible benefits too, because you get the social support, it keeps you on track, and all of a sudden it's Wednesday again and you have to meet your study group, and so it's Tuesday night and it's a reminder to review the material before you go to your study group. So some of the tips we have that from our own personal experience and from some of the research, it helps if it's small, so like 3 to 8, it depends on your own personal vibe, but really any more than 5 and it's kind of challenging. And don't avoid including people who might be at a different level or might be in a different place. It's helpful because you can teach other students what you might already know, and it helps your own understanding of the issues if you can explain it to people who might be at a different place. So so I actually find that the study groups that have been most helpful for me are the ones where there is the biggest gap in where people are at in terms of the material. It depends on your own learning style. And then the last thing we have here is be participatory. So, inclusive of people who want to participate and just getting to know your colleagues a little bit better. It helps to reach outside of the group that you initially gel with. You make connections that last a lifetime, hopefully, and get exposed to different perspectives. So I think we want to do a check-in on.
Yeah, and then just also on the note of the study groups, you're going to have classes where you have regular assignments that are due, and then you're going to have classes where you may have like 2 exams the entire quarter, right? And so study groups are probably, in my opinion, they're a little bit more helpful for those where you only have like 2 exams for the quarter, because the classes where you have regular assignments, you kind of have a sense of how you're doing regularly throughout the time that you're there. But with the classes where you only have like 2 exams, you don't really know how well you're doing until the middle. And then you might feel like too much pressure to catch up. But if you're in a study group, it helps because you kind of understand where everyone else is at, right? And the more, it's all relative. So the more likely you are on the same page with everyone, the more likely you are to excel in the class. So I just wanted to add that. And yes, we did want to do a check-in for,
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
How do the discussion groups, how did you find the discussion groups fit into, or how do they differ from the study groups? Because we do have that in a much smaller format, and we're also supposed to be staying on track with material and participating. And
do you mean your class discussions, like with the
for
TS?
210? Is that the one that you're talking about? Or
yeah, that's the one.
210, yeah. So I took 210. You did too,
I took
right?
210.
Yeah, and I found those discussion groups were a little bit big, and it was easy to not participate. Yeah, so I don't remember the exact number, but there was at least 15 people in my tutorial group. And you're right, it's a great opportunity to check in. The TA is there, and usually there's some structured, there's exercises and some structured feedback and stuff like that. Yeah, so I would say these are a little more informal. You can talk about whatever you want. You can, vary the content.
Did you have a study group in 210?
I didn't have a study group in 210, but what class? I had study groups in other classes where there were also discussion sections. And I think, again, it's about being self-aware and knowing kind of what works for you. If you're participatory in your discussion section and you feel like you're really getting a lot out of it, there may not be a need to have a separate study group. But if you're not, and if that isn't the case for you, maybe you'll want to look into that. Yeah.
Would you recommend dividing the study groups by course, or if you're taking a lot of courses with the same people, having it be like an all-inclusive study group, which is course material?
That's a good question.
I don't know that it would matter so
Yeah.
much. It kind of, if you find a group that you really vibe seems like the word of the day. If you vibe with, right? And you guys are all taking the same courses throughout the year and want to have a regular study group, I think that's an excellent idea. Maybe that's not going to be the case for everyone. So I'm not sure. I don't have any perspective on if that matters or not.
I don't either. I would say personal, depending on you and your classmates. Seems like a good idea.
Yeah, it seems like a good.
I mean, with our study group.
We are in that boat.
So our study group that we had for the comprehensive exam, our exam had both theory and method. So it was two different parts to it, and we did meet together as a group for all of it. So we talked about theory some days, methods other days. And actually we weren't super. We had some topics planned in advance, but we also just if we needed more time on a particular area, we would just spend more time on that. So it was nice to have the freedom with that group of, as a group, we're feeling like we need more focus on methods, so we're going to just go there instead. And so it might be similar if you feel.
Right. I would say that is a positive of that, like having a group that you go with through all of it, is that you know each other and a little bit more as you go along. So it may not take as much time to set up a structure of a study group. So that would be a pro to that approach.
Food for thought. Try it. Let us know. So we can tell them students next year what's better. I don't know if I talked about the last point, but be participatory on the other slide was just, get involved. Don't join a study group and just be a freeloader, right? It's kind of impossible if there's only 3 to 5 people in the group. But
kicked out.
Go for it.
Sorry, another question about the study groups. Do you usually do those in the library, or do you do it at someone's house, or what?
Yeah.
So we've done it multiple ways. We've done it where we've reserved rooms in the library, which you can do. And so you get a closed off room in, I always forget the name, Powell.
Powell.
And we've also done it by Skype.
Yeah.
We've done it by, because we all had to be in different places, but it helps to check in. And so we all did a group Skype call for a study group. I've done that in multiple classes, not just with the cohort, actually, the Skype study group. So I think, again, it depends. When everyone's participatory, everyone should let each other know what you're most comfortable with. So maybe some people won't be able to get to campus sometimes, and you'll be like, okay, well, let's just have a call. Or, maybe everyone's on campus at the same time, so let's just go over to the library. Let's go to a coffee shop. Let's go eat over it. And, it might work out best to make it a conversation depending on the subject matter.
Yeah, the study rooms are actually really easy to book if you go on the library website. It's easy, it's free, and you get this really nice room with a whiteboard, and it's it has a TV and stuff. You can hook up your computer too. So it's fancy.
It's really nice.
Yeah.
We got time. We gotta hurry.
Yeah. Okay, so this is a little bit fast, but.
Oh no, she's saying time.
Okay. So our next tip is be smart about reading. So you're going to have a lot of reading, probably more than you've ever had before, and this is a delicate balance that is different for every class. But sometimes it's not possible to read it all, and you need to figure out what's the best use of your time and how to spend it, and that's really depending on your own skills, where you're at, and also the particular course and the professor. But I find personally for me it's helpful to at least skim over the entire set of readings for every class, and then decide which parts are best to focus on, and to do more in-depth reading of. Some articles I have to read 2 or 3 times to first understand, then to develop an opinion on, and then third to finally critique it and get a little bit deeper into the methods. And sometimes you might find that using your note-taking skills and reading particular parts of the article is more useful. So if it's a methodological class, you want to read the methods more in depth, and it really depends on the class. But being smart and targeted about what you read can help you to feel less overwhelmed about the volume of it.
Mm-hmm.
And I find personally note-taking, when I write things out by hand, it's for me, it solidifies the material much more than if I highlight, or if I just read it off of a screen, or even in print if I just read it. I need to actually, take pen to paper, or sometimes take notes on my computer in order to crystallize the learning. So figure out what works for you and do it. And Doctoring Essential reminded me that there's a different part of your brain that gets activated when you take notes. So it actually does help you to learn in a different way when you actively take notes on something instead of highlight. Yeah.
I'm really worried about reading because I tend to be a little bit OCD and feel like I have to read every word.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't mean if I read every word I'll actually understand it. But how do you know when to dig deeper? When you really need to know the material. Is that something that you'll get kind of feedback from your professor? Do you listen for clues?
I think that's going to be, again, class dependent. Sometimes the professors will be like, I'm going to talk about this reading of all of the readings. So yeah, that one you probably want to read word for word. There's going to be those obvious things. But the method that I use a lot is, for the literature at least, that has an abstract at first, right? I read that and I'm saying, oh, I don't really understand what they're talking about here. So I know I need to focus a bit more on the methods or the discussion. How did they get to that conclusion from those methods? So I will focus on that particular part. For the ones that have abstracts, that's an easier thing to do. I think it's going to take time and just kind of repetition. After you do it for a while, it'll become easier. So one of the tips that we'll get to, and when we're trying to wrap up, I guess, here soon, is that every time I've come back to school, I've had some time off, right? So between my undergrad and my master's program, I took a year off. Between my master's and my PhD program, I took 7 years and I was working. So I always come back in starting as strong as possible. I don't put anything else on my plate that first quarter. I want to know how I'm going to take the program, how I'm going to do in my classes, and then kind of scale back or scale forward as much as I need to based on myself. So maybe the first quarter that you're in, you want to pay attention to more detail in that space. So then the subsequent quarters, you can kind of adapt as needed. I hope that helps. Yes.
I would just add that you want to do all the reading. It would be a mistake to concentrate on a few articles so much that you don't get to it all. It's kind of like when you take an exam, you have to pace yourself through it. So if you know you have 3 hours to do the reading for the class, and you've got 6 articles, you start with a half an hour a piece. And if you've taken an hour and a half on one, you know you have to pick up the pace. Because you do, in general, you find that the entirety of the reading gets covered on exams.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, don't not read something,
right.
But just focus your efforts on different areas. Yeah.
And Dr. Anderson, so you said that when we take notes, it activates a certain part of our brain. Is that handwritten notes only or typing?
I just find this that you can type it and you learn it, part of it that way. Then if you take your typewritten notes and you make notes on them, you process it differently when it's on paper and you're writing part of it.
Right.
I don't know that there's research on that, but that's how I find the students who work with me do better when they do that. You do it all on the computer screen, so you're not getting it all.
Right. Yeah, definitely don't skip any readings. Right. don't do that.
So yeah, that's right. That wasn't the message in case that was confusing.
Right.
Just that, yeah.
I was just
Focusing is
advised
helpful.
at the diversity study skills that all the reading would be humanly impossible, which was kind of like, oh, you know.
Right.
So I think spending an hour and a half per article would be impossible,
Right.
but half an hour per article is probably feasible. So at whatever pace you need to go, and then whichever sections, personally, that would be my approach.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. And so procrastination is often a big issue for people. I find it helpful to prioritize my tasks, and then doing the difficult ones first. It works for me. There's a big difference between having a problem with time management and having a problem with procrastination. Time management is about organization and about the time, and procrastination has an emotional element to it. So it's avoiding things that you don't want to do for lots of reasons, right? For insecurity or discomfort or anything like that. But I find if I prioritize my tasks and then get the difficult ones out of the way, I make much more headway on the easier ones because I'm not thinking in the back of my mind about the difficult ones that I really don't want to do. And it's also helpful to break up your larger tasks into smaller, more manageable ones. Setting goals and timelines for smaller chunks of a bigger task is a really good way to make sure that you're on track and finishing a big paper or studying for a big exam, but still doing it in a stepwise and manageable way. And then there's this sort of delicate balance of not making too big of a deal of everything, but also, so you don't want to overvalue it because that can make you anxious and it can make those big tasks seem really big, much bigger than they are. But you don't want to undervalue it either because then you don't put enough effort into it. So yeah, we want to stress that here it's important to take this program seriously and take your studying seriously, but also to give yourself a break and to not make it seem any more difficult than it needs to be. There's a lot of time management and study resources available to the students here. The Writing Center is a really great resource. They will review your work for you. They have good workshops. I'm sure you've heard about it before, but it's called the Graduate Writing Center. You can Google it and make an appointment anytime you like. I put some apps up here, some ones that some I've personally used, some I found helpful. You can look at them after on your own. None of these are substitutes for skills like organization and time management, but they will help you to keep you on track with those things. So we'll talk about them at the end if we have time, but this is, I think, our last.
Yeah, this is our last slide. So the first tip is take advice from others with a grain of salt. So what I mean by that is that your experience is your own. If people that you're going to talk to previous years, if they have negative things to say, if that influences you at all, take it with a grain of salt because you're starting out here and you can make this whatever you want it to be. So I just wanted to put that as a tip 1. And then.
Yeah, my tip 2 is it applies more to just read the question, read it again, then start the assignment, and then read the question again. And this is broader than just assignments. It really has to do with what is being expected of you and how you interpret that. So sometimes there's an expectation and you think you got it and you start doing something and then you hand it in, and what you've produced is actually very far away from what the expectation was because you've gone through your own process to get to wherever you went. But if you check back in with what either the question was or the assignment, it's really helpful to make sure that the product that you've produced is exactly in line with what you're going to be graded against, because that's how you're going to get a good grade.
And then manage your stress. Really take care of yourself. I'm sure that they've talked about this in orientation. I remember getting in my orientation, just make sure that you're, always, if you're stressed out, looking for resources to help you manage that stress, use your peers as support, all of those types of things.
And then just lastly, in the first quarter, it's helpful to take stock of where you are, to see how you're doing with the workload, and not to take anything else on that you don't need to until you get an idea of how the workload's going to be and how comfortable you are with it. It's always easier to add than subtract responsibilities, right?
So we're probably giving you a lot of both how to study and how to get the most out of the program, probably. So that's it.
Yeah, those are our perspectives.
Yeah,
Can we
question.
ask
You're
questions?
welcome.
Yeah,
Yes, please.
So I'm like 1 year out of undergrad, and in undergrad I noticed like there's lots of, more checkpoints throughout the semester about how you're doing, feedback from your professor. So I'm really looking for like some specific help with how you prepare for an exam that covers, 5 weeks of material all at once. Do you find outlining to be helpful, like group outlining, like what kind of specific skills have you used to like tackle studying for those kind of exams, and how much time have you given yourself?
I think the time is probably, it's going to vary by person. So, and it depends on how comfortable you already are with the material. But I think those are the kinds of classes where study groups are really helpful. So, of course, you want to use your own methods on how you study best, right? To try and just absorb everything that's being presented to you. Get together with your study group after that, in between, like maybe at the, halfway between the beginning and the midterm, right? And see, hey, is everyone else absorbing the material the same? Are they interpreting it the same? Are we understanding what's being presented the same? And I think that'll help you feel more comfortable with the information in addition to your discussion sections.
Yeah, I know there's another session on test taking in particular, so attend that. And also, yeah, check in with your TAs and your professors. They'll help you gauge how you're doing along the way if you want more feedback.
I would just say that as an instructor, I always think my expectations are perfectly clear. My class's first assignment is due today, and Jenna and Danielle are in that class, and there were quite a few questions about assignment 1 on Tuesday, and I think assignment 1 is perfectly clear. There are 3 sentences on it. You should ask your instructors what you mean. If they ask if there are questions, often I hear no questions in a big class. Nobody wants to ask. As soon as somebody asks, there are 8 questions. And you want to make sure, especially in the first 2 quarters, that you're understanding what the instructor's expectation is. And so ask. It's quite legitimate to ask.
Because we are both doctoral students, I'm actually a third year in that page, but I'm also in the MA side too, calculated. And so, how do you manage going to classes but doing your self-directed research? Have you done independent study? When do you do IRB, and how do you do it during an independent study, or do you do it just like?
Well,
Yeah, go for it.
So what I've done is I've tried to take, every time I have the option in a class to dictate what I'm focusing on, I make it related to incarceration issue. And that's helped me build up the information and skills to work towards my thesis and dissertation. That's one way. When you say IRB, do you mean like click to submit to the IRB? So I'm not at that stage yet.
Your advisor, you have to work with your advisor on the IRB. Otherwise you'll spend a year on the IRB on that.
And is that usually during an independent study or just on your time?
I would talk to your advisor about it right away and see what their expectations are. More generally, you should check in with your advisors. Just in the middle of the quarter, let them know how it's going. We actually want you to come in the middle of the quarter and tell us how it's going. And if it's going well, if you have problems, we definitely want to see it.
Dr. Ann Central?
Yeah, and Central. Yeah.
Ann Central.
Very good.
You run a writing program. When's the next opportunity for that? Sorry, Miss.
Oh no, I have. I know what you mean. I have writing tips outside my door. I'm putting them up on Mondays. So this week's is up there. This week's is. They're just writing tips. The writing instruction is at the graduate centered. They will work with you individually. This is I get tired of correcting the same writing problems. So I put the number one is start early enough because this week's is, it takes 3 drafts to have a first draft. So you cannot start your term papers the night before, not in graduate school. And we are, you have other questions for me? I am having Q&A with Dr. A. This is a new thing for me. It's next Thursday or Tuesday? Tuesday. It's Tuesday at 11, right? This is drop-in, open, whatever you want to talk about, that's what we're going to talk about. And this is once a month, starting next Tuesday. And the good thing about that is it's right before the coffee hour. And this is our first coffee hour, and it's on the 3rd floor. You're going to get to see where the people who are on the 3rd floor are. There's cookie. Oh, there's cookie. There's fruit. There's fruit and cheese and things to drink, and somebody is bringing the cookies. We have a large group of the nutrition group. I do stress and mental health. Cookies, you're studying. I wouldn't do it without cookies nearby. So we hope to see you all next week for the test taking. Okay? Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.